It's been more than 6 months since the mass shooting at a high school in Parkland, Florida. That shooting took the lives of 17 people, but it also prompted a new movement for gun control led by students who were survivors. A few days ago, one of them joined with local activists in a march from Springfield to Worcester. Activists also made their point in Boston with a back-to-school fashion show on City Hall Plaza. To tell us about the campaign are the president of March for Our Lives Boston, Vikiana Petit-Homme, a rising senior at Boston Latin Academy, and a member of the group from Somerville High School, Felix Brody. Thank you both for being with us. I want to start with Vikiana. To start with, what put gun violence on your radar screen and got you into this movement?
I think it's the fact that gun violence predominantly and disproportionately affects communities of color. Yet when you look at the gun violence movement, you don't really see that. Communities of color are silenced and ignored for their calls for reform. They've been doing this for years, decades. No one's listening. So I like to use whatever platform I have to make sure that people are listening to them and that their stories are being told.
Felix, what about you? What got you aware of gun violence?
I mean, right after Parkland, I was enraged, and I did a little bit of research, and it was like, wow, this is a huge problem. I mean, just looking at the simple facts, like the upwards of 30,000 people a year killed by gun violence, or that most shootings aren't even reported or publicized in the media, and that the American people don't have any understanding of how big that this problem is. That's what really got me motivated.
I'm used to Boston, but I don't think of Somerville in terms of violence, unless you go back to Winter Hill Gang, which is before your time. So what about your experiences? Do people have you prepare for things going around that could happen in the school?
I mean, yeah, we've had lockdown drills since middle school, and I know that 2 former Somerville High School students were lost to gun violence in the past year, and though I didn't personally know them, I saw the effects that it had on my community, yeah.
Vikiana, what about you? I mean, I know there was somebody within the past week who was shot and killed near your school, just a few blocks away.
Yeah, I live in Hyde Park, which is definitely one of the safer areas in Boston. But I go to school, and my school is it's basically on the border of Dorchester and Roxbury, which are one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Boston. So we have a lot of times where our school has to go into safety mode because there's something going on around the school, there's something going on outside of school. So I definitely know what it's like to be kind of like wary, like, okay, I'm gonna walk through this part of the neighborhood, so pay close attention, yeah.
Are there any kinds of gun control, do you think, that would affect that kind of violence in some way that would help, you think?
I think Massachusetts, legislation-wise, I think we've done a lot. I think there's still more that we can do. I think when it comes to Massachusetts, we've already dealt with making sure that guns aren't so accessible that only the right people can own guns. I think now it's going into the deeper root causes of gun violence, like economic inequality and education justice, and making sure that students have after-school programs to go to when school ends so that they're not on the streets, making sure that students don't have to go to a life of crime to support their family. It's stuff like that, I think, is where Massachusetts can help when it comes to the gun violence issue.
This has been the news. We're talking with Vikiana Petit-Homme and Felix Brody from March for Our Lives. Felix, one of the demands in the march that recently took place to Springfield is that you want Smith & Wesson, the gun manufacturer, to stop distributing, kind of high-powered weapons. Explain how that would...
So it's all assault weapons that are illegal in our state under the 2004 Massachusetts assault weapons ban, as well as copycat enforcement under this Attorney General Maura Healey. It's important that Smith & Wesson stop producing these guns because they are illegal in our state. What they're doing is perfectly legal, but that doesn't mean it's right. How can we sit by as Massachusetts citizens as they produce guns that we don't think are safe enough for us, and they ship them out of state into communities like Parkland, into communities like Aurora, and into communities like San Bernardino, where they're used in mass murder of innocent people?
Vikiana, we're talking about different kinds of gun concerns here. It could be people who see what's on TV with assault weapons and mass shootings, And then you're talking also about people here in Boston who walk past street memorials. What's it like? You're at this march going out to Springfield a few days ago. What was that like for you? You're with all these different kinds of people.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting because I think we had a great mix of people who dealt with gun violence in terms of their everyday lives, and then we have people like David Hogg and Manuel Oliver from Parkland who experienced a different type of gun violence, as a school shooting. So it's definitely great to have everyone just stand next to each other in solidarity and remember that gun violence comes in a lot of different ways, even though people might not see it, but remembering everyone, that was really impactful. I think it motivated people in terms of you got to keep marching. It's 50 miles, but you can do this, and we're doing it for the people who can't be here right now.
Felix, you ever think of how important it is that the students are actually, putting their faces and their voices out there and taking leadership around this?
I mean, I do think it's important, and young people are disregarded by our politicians. The young people that can vote usually don't, and that leads to a cycle where the politicians don't care, and then because the politicians don't care about what the young people think, then the young people don't vote, and we need to end that. So I think it would be really powerful to see young people raising their voices and getting out and voting, not only in November, but in September in these primaries and in these local elections like district attorney. That really can affect people's lives.
Vikiana, what about that? I mean, you see this in your neighborhood, maybe people getting enthused to vote? I mean, it's hard to get them to vote right after Labor Day, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of what I've been doing, I'm engaging everyone that I know. Are you going to vote? Do you know that there's an election? Just trying to get people out to vote. And I think with the climate that we have now, everyone understands the importance of voting, understands that especially in these local elections, your voice counts, which has been awesome.
And finally, Felix, you had this fashion show in City Hall Plaza with students wearing protective gear. Tell us a little bit about what they were wearing and what they're trying to say by doing it.
So it was all organized by Manuel Oliver, who is the father of Joaquin Oliver, who was killed in Parkland. And he is definitely empowering the community through art and through fashion. And students were wearing gas masks and helmets and bulletproof vests and megaphones to alert their other students. I think it shows how powerful. I think it shows how powerful art is, and I also think that it shows the direction we could be heading in the future.
Yes.
I think the most powerful thing about that was because of how it wasn't exactly an exaggeration anymore. People really do want to do this in schools. They do want us to have, like I'm seeing advertisements for bulletproof backpacks and clear backpacks, you know what I mean? These are actual things that are happening in our schools. This is where the government actually wants us to go. That's why I think the fashion show was powerful.
Now, another thing that happens with an event like this, people take photos of it with their iPhones and they put it on their Facebook account, and you get social media working. Vikiana, talk about that, because you're doing a lot of that, aren't you?
Yeah, a lot of our work happens through social media, especially when it comes to connecting to young people. Like, you get to spread your message in a way that you wouldn't before. A lot more people get to see what you stand for and just the impact of what you're doing, which is really great.
I think that was especially shown with what we just did. When we marched 50 miles, we had students from across the state come in. And these were people that I didn't know, these were people that Vikiana didn't know, and they were from all corners of Massachusetts, from all backgrounds, from all walks of life. And they heard about it through social media, and then they got involved through social media. And they raised their voices.
Now, speaking of walks of life, both of you are going to be something other than high school students before much longer. Felix, where do you see yourself doing a few years down the road? Where this is taking you, at least?
I think maybe not necessarily just gun violence, but I think speaking up for young people while I'm still young, speaking up for the causes that I believe in, helping to change the way that politics works and how our politicians view us and how they respond to us, and stop taking money from companies like the NRA. I think that's what I'm interested in.
Vikiana, what about you? Where do you see yourself?
Yeah, I'm going to go to college very soon, so I definitely see myself doing something very similar, whether it's running for office to make sure that voices are actually heard, or running and working with a nonprofit to make sure that we're providing a platform for disenfranchised communities.
And finally, people want to get in touch, find out more about the campaign. You've got a website or something they can look at?
You can check out March for Our Lives Boston. Our website is marchforlivesboston.com.
Thank you both very much, Vikiana Petit-Homme and Felix Brody. We'll have more news in just a moment.